I know that since April of 2010, new safety regulations kicked in, focused on improving security. We live in a different world post 9/11. How has South Africa fared?
No, as you said, that a new act came into place 2009, and that act was meant at reinforcing our current regulation in terms of safety and security. I think we are Category 1 status, as we have indicated. My colleague has said they've just obtained Category 1. We have maintained that since 1998. So in terms of our safety regime, I think South Africa is doing quite well.
All right, now besides global terrorism, which has been the overarching security fear internationally, there are other threats. Threats, for instance, such as sabotage of air navigation systems. We've seen erratic climatic conditions, the volcano that grounded flights in Europe, things like health pandemics, swine flu, those kinds of issues. How is the environment changing for you?
Obviously, we are a bit reactive to some of these things. We are reactive to the adverse weather that affected Europe recently. But if you look at countries, the north of Europe, they have been prepared for this situation. But if you look at down here in our continent, with respect to health issues, there's a regime that is in place, and South Africa is leading that regime in our region, AFI region. It's called AFI region, where safety and security issues are being discussed and guidelines from ICAO are being implemented. So going forward, I think we're doing well. We're able to react. We've got systems in place as a country, and also airlines themselves are required to have a regime to react in case of any of those happening.
I mean, obviously your work focuses on civil aviation, but there are concerns and calls for some of the new regulations to apply to the South African military and for training on security issues to be extended that far. How much collaboration is there?
There is collaboration. I think South Africa presented a paper at ICAO last year where there was an indication of serious collaboration between the police, the army, and the civil part of aviation. And also the Act stipulates that there's got to be meetings that are taking place 4 times a year where all state agencies are involved in doing this. Now, with respect to the police, it's easier to work with them because most of their activities are clandestine, are open, not clandestine. And also they use helicopters for their operations, which in some instances are under our control. Their aircraft are ZA registered, which we control. With respect to military, they've got their own codes and their own airspace that they control, which therefore defines what we're doing.
A new era of regulation is then influenced by a new conversation on climate change. And one wonders to what extent the regulator is now having to devise new policies or approaches for airline manufacturers to start to employ technologies that use less fossil fuels.
The industry manufacturers are leading in that direction. The regulations are still lagging behind. If there's no agreement in Cancun, there's nothing we can do from our side. But there have been work groups that have been working for the last 2 years under UNCCC, where the guidelines are being drafted to look at issues that are going to improve the green environment, if I may put in. If you recall, a few days ago, ComAir launched a simulator. And that simulator largely is very environmental friendly, despite the fact that we don't have regulations, but they are moving and making sure that they do that. And they are doing that together with Boeing. Airbus also has a program of making sure that they don't wait for regulations. There are things that they can start doing now, and they are continue doing them. In terms of our regime, we used to speak of safety and security. Now we say safety, security, and environment, because we're beginning to bring into a certain mindset that says we should take care of environment as well.
Lumkile Mondi, your views on the general successes and failures, if any, of regulation of civil aviation in South Africa?
Well, I mean, we're all aware that the biggest risks are the private owners who in many cases read about them that they crashed in a storm. But I think overall South Africa, in terms of if you talk about the public, we've done extremely well. I think the biggest challenge for the South African market is only on the passenger side, where we continue, even though there's about 3 players, one time Come and SA. We'd like to see more players in that space. I mean, we lost Nationwide, which was a big blow for us because Nationwide had shaken the industry a bit. So I think we're looking forward to seeing what the Civil Aviation Authority is going to be doing in terms of domestic competition, allowing the new players that have applied, because there is a player that has applied.
Let's get your views on this one, liberalizing the commercial environment for more private players to come through.
I think a decision was taken a while ago that anyone who wants to enter the market, as long as you have the correct plan, the correct business plan, you have safety regime, you have the required equipment, you are able to enter the industry. We have not in the last maybe 4 years refused any player to come in if they meet the required regulations. Right. So for us, for instance, not long ago, we didn't have the low-cost airline, the one time of this world, the Kululas of this world. Even South African Airways has entered the market with Mango. We allow that market space. We allow people to operate because we believe part of our responsibility is to develop aviation in South Africa, and that's one contribution that we can
And
make.
a final question, just in terms of ensuring that the customer is king. I don't know to what extent it, occurs within the purview of the work that you do, but airport taxes seem to be discriminatory for the passenger. Often, especially for domestic tickets, they account for 1/3 of the ticket cost, and there's just a sense that it's a ridiculous pricing system.
The Act stipulates that the funding for CAA, AXA, ATNS will come from the industry. So for us, the service that is given, we give to the players out there. They pay for it. So does people who are using the airport, so does people who are using the ATNS services. There's an amount of money that they pay. From the information that I have, is that I think if you look at the countries in SADC, for instance, I think our rates are still affordable.